And now to a subject of discuss, organized labor has tabled 615,000 naira as new minimum wage per month, citing the present economic reality. The NLC President Joe Ajaero says it's in the push for improved conditions for workers. The proposed wage increase follows extensive consultations between the NLC and the Trade Union Congress, culminating in the consensus that the current minimum wage of 30,000 naira is woefully inadequate to sustain the average Nigerian worker. Labour leaders lamented the failure of some governors to fully implement the existing wage structure, which expired in April, 5 years after the enactment of the Minimum Wage Act of 2019 by former President Muhammadu Buhari. This act stipulates periodic reviews every 5 years to align with the evolving economic realities faced by workers. So how realistic is this proposed figure by organized labor with the current economic situation of the country? Let's hear from Joe Ajaero himself.
Just close to the end of May 29th. The
proposed figure.
I greet our listeners across the globe. Am I audible enough?
I can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think there is a collusion here. I appreciate the position of Nigerian Labour Congress. I appreciate the position of other stakeholders. But I want to look at the Nigerian economy from a different angle. I still will not want to accept the devaluation of the Nigerian currency. I wouldn't want to accept the depreciation of the Nigerian currency. What I would rather accept is a situation where we will make sure we bring down the cost of things. I still remember when a bag of rice was below 10,000 Nigerian naira. I still remember when a liter of petrol was less than 100 Nigerian naira. The question and the discussion that we should bring to the table is this. What do we need to do so that a bag of rice still comes back to below 10,000 Nigerian naira, which is possible? What do we need to do so that a liter of petrol can come down to below 100 naira per liter, which is possible? And by the time we look at the variables at play, we will discover that there is a need for us to internally domesticate. Can we do something about insecurity so that farmers can go back to farm and the cost of food will come down by the time we boost food security? That is the direction I want to look at things. I also want to make sure I look at situations where we look at other variables that will make sure the cost of petrol comes down. What do we need to do? Do we need to deliberately make sure we stop importing and make sure our refineries work? Because some countries have refineries that are more than 100 years and they are still working. Do we need to do something to make sure we explore our vegetation, our local herbs, so that the cost of drugs will come down?
All right.
Because if we don't look at it from that perspective, if we continue to accept the bastardization of our currency, a time will come when minimum wage will be heading towards 1 million naira, 2 million naira. And at that point, we don't need anybody to tell us that we have been reduced to a country of economic melancholy.
I hear you, Mr. Zakka. And you're saying that we should beware of the Zimbabwe dollar situation, and that there are more ways to solve this problem than throwing more money. But also joining us is the 2023 SDP presidential candidate, Prince Adebayo. Let me bring Prince Adebayo into the conversation very quickly. Labour leaders are saying nothing less than a living wage is condemning workers to poverty. And while they have proposed 615,000 naira, the governors have also said the agreed amount has to be something sustainable. Do you think that we'll be able to find a nexus between what the federal government calls minimum wage, what governors are calling sustainable.
It simply means if we plan and decide to think in national interest, we can reverse the situation. Nigeria is not experiencing a natural disaster. Nigeria is not experiencing any external aggression. What has happened in Nigeria is a case where we decided to take things for granted, and we are suffering for what we have taken for granted. So what honestly we need to do is to look inward, and that's the only way we can bring back dignity. If we allow and remember, all this depreciation and devaluation of our currency happened in less than 2 decades. 2 decades is just too short. It's too alarming. It's too disastrous for the currency and the economy of the country to go
Your proposal, Mr. Zakka, is very fantastic, but time is of essence when you consider the reality of inflation, the removal of fuel subsidy, the economic reality of the average Nigerian worker. For instance, the Tinubu administration has had its fair share of labor disputes in the past year. But do you think that the recent announcement that the new minimum wage will commence from the 1st of April is enough to persuade labor pending a decision by the tripartite committee?
It's not. The question is, we are on the wrong track. Why can't we reverse things when they are wrong? Why can't we reverse bad policies? Why can't we reverse them? If policies are wrong, reverse the policies. How can you be a country of 200 million citizens and you hope to be importing something that is very essential to your survival? If we continue with this line of thinking that you are Labour and other Nigerian leaders are talking about, that means we will continue to import refined petroleum products. When we have the raw materials here, we will continue to import virtually everything. Nigeria's population is too huge for us to continue to import basic things that we require that are as essential as oxygen of life to us. Energy security is necessary for survival of the country. Food security is necessary. Health security, educational security, social security. And all I'm saying is this, because our problems are self-inflicted, we can reverse them. Rushing to increase the minimum wage will not do us any good. Because if you do it now, after 4 years of President Tinubu, if he comes back again, after probably 8 years of President Tinubu, the next generation of Labour leaders will be asking for 2 million as minimum wage. Is that how we want to see our country decaying? Is that how we want the trajectory of our economy recovery and currency recovery and oil and gas recovery, our educational recovery to look like? That is where I'm standing. The trajectory is not going to do us any good. We will be reduced to some of the countries that have been rubbished. Let us be mindful of the future of the trajectory we are trying to set today. And I keep insisting our own problem is artificial. If it were to be a natural disaster, then I can accept. Why can't we reverse an artificially and self-inflicted malady?
I hear you clearly, Mr. Zakka, but what happens in the interim? Because there is a minimum wage act, that requires that this figure be reviewed every 5 years. So this law is pending. Whatever organized labor is asking for is backed by law. And it's something that all of the stakeholders involved agree with, which of course informed the formulation of the tripartite committee looking to review the amount. What is your recommendation in the interim? I get it that you're saying there are more factors that determine the quality of life of the average worker than how much they earn. But the law requires that the figure be reviewed upwards. Are you saying that shouldn't happen?
If the law is wrong, reverse it. What you are saying was the exact reason why we have not been able to have functional refineries. Because when we have serious shortage of refined petroleum products, instead of looking inward, everybody will be saying, what should we do in the interim? What should we do in the interim? And what we always do in the interim is to rush, go and import. By the time we import and everybody becomes relaxed, we forget about fixing our refinery. So there is already a trend and a phenomenology. Whenever we are hard hit, we look for interim measures. If we recover from the interim measures, we go to sleep. And that is what our country is suffering. And that is why I'm saying, let us look at the dangerous and the negative trajectory we want to embark on. Because we are talking about 600 and something thousand naira minimum wage. What happens after 4 years? First part of President Tinubu. What happens after 8 years? The next generation of labor leaders and the economy things may deteriorate, and you'll be asking for 2 million. So people will then still be talking about interim measures. It happened in the oil and gas industry. Why can't we fix this? When we run into shortages and scarcity, we rush with interim measures. Everybody says it. So I don't buy the government aspect, and I don't buy the labor aspect. It is law. Laws are meant for men, not meant for laws.
For instance, you talked about the refineries.
Let us look at the
Mr. Zakka.
trend
Yes.
that we want to start today.
You talked about the refineries. We're hearing, for instance, that the refinery in Kaduna and Port Harcourt.
Whether on the side of government or on the side of labor, why can't we look at those artificial problems, fix them, and reverse the negative trend and the dying nature of our economy?
Would you say that this administration is towing that path of policy change? For instance, you mentioned refineries. We're hearing that there are some efforts in that regard, and that the refineries in Kaduna and Port Harcourt, for instance, should be operational in the last quarter of this year. May 29 is just a few days ahead. Do you think this administration is making significant efforts in that regard?
Well, it depends, because as far back as December, we were told that the refinery, a refinery in Port Harcourt was mechanically completed. Why can't we insist that before this regime gets to 1 year, we see refined petroleum products coming out? Let us start small rather than accepting, because we are planting a very dangerous generational seed. Once you increase this minimum wage, 200,000, 300. That means it is in the same manner that the value of your currency is decaying, is becoming devalued, is getting depreciated. And this government will be remembered as a government that allowed that trend to continue. When one day a currency, a minimum wage will get to 1 million, why not reverse the artificial trend? It is doable. Why can't we reverse it? Because you cannot make minimum wage 70,000, 80,000, 200,000, and think you can reverse it tomorrow. That means it will never go back to 20,000. Why can't we do things that will make us get back to those good days? And remember, everything about the bastardization of this economy and our currency happened in less than 10 or 20 years. We can reverse it. If not, history will not forgive us, and posterity will not be kind to us.
All right.
So, based on that, I will support government and I will support labor. Let's reverse the artificial issues and problems.
But as we speak now,
we can reverse them.
Yes, as we speak now, Mr. Zakka, Cross River State Governor already announced 40,000 naira. Prior to that time, we heard from the Edo State Governor who said, the minimum wage in the state will now be 70,000. Do you think that these announcements, without necessarily waiting for the outcome of the National Minimum Wage Committee, suggests that they may have opted out of any anticipated recommendation from the Tripartite Committee?
Of course, what is happening is clearly showing that there is no unity in the government and governance of this country. Because when you talk about minimum wage, it is something that should cut across. It is something that there should be unanimity. There should be an understanding, even when the economy is fighting hard or harder. Like I keep telling you, every time people will say, the interim, what do we do? Because by accepting that minimum wage is now 70,000, minimum wage is 100,000, that means Nigerian currency has been reduced to that level. And quote me that in 4 years' time, the same minimum wage will go to 200,000 or 150. What do you think you are doing to the value of your currency? What do you think you are doing to the value of your economy?
Interesting way you have put it, but I hope it resonates with the stakeholders, particularly the millions of Nigerian workers who are anticipated to hear from the tripartite committee and who seem to have the backing of of organized labor in this regard. But that's our time, and thank you for joining us, oil and gas expert Bala Zakka. It's always good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
And that's our show today, everyone. You can watch it again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi. Oguntoye. See you again at 7 p.m.